The other one was crazy bright blue and really pepperminty, which does not sound enjoyable. Would you believe students, the familiar tasting beverage, beer-like drink, they tolerated better than a drink they'd never had before. The crazy blue mint drink hit them harder. They subjectively reported that they were more intoxicated, and even objective measures showed they were more impaired, even though it was getting them to the same blood alcohol level. So being in the same environment doesn't make you immune from an overdose, but being in a novel environment clearly makes the risk out of this world. One study in Spain, Gutierrez Cebollada, said, listen, I don't want people hearing that if they're in the same environment, they're fine. He did a study of consecutive admissions into a hospital setting. Only criteria, you had to have drugs in your body. They wanted to know, did they meet criteria for overdose, which 54 people did, or the drugs in the person's body, but they were below the medical threshold for overdose. That was 22 people. And were they there from a same or a novel environment? He wanted each column to add up to 100%. And first, he was right. Being in the same environment didn't make you immune from an overdose. 52% of the people who met criteria for an overdose were in the same novel environment, 48% the same. But I can look you in the eye and say the next column I've never seen statistically before. All of them had been in the same environment, and a single person had been from a novel environment. In other words, if you want to go left or right and have those columns add up to 100%, if you were in a new environment and you wound up in a hospital later that night, 100% of the time it was for an overdose. The language literally used in our field is that tolerance will fail to follow someone to a new environment. I told you about the taste part. They say if alcohol is presented in a manner divorced from the usual alcohol-associated stimuli, the effects of the alcohol are enhanced. Wherever you guys are going, what does once you land represent? A brand new set of cues, a brand new environment. So if your sense is, I don't have tolerance, in the spirit of looking out for your classmate, if you're like, that guy always drinks 4, why is it affecting him so hard? I hope this highlights why it could be affecting someone in such a pronounced way. If your sense is, well, I actually can hold my liquor pretty well, keep in mind that if you say, I normally drink X number of drinks at home, cutting that in half might hit you just as hard, if not harder, in a new environment. So, before we move off this, let me check and see what questions you have, or I can clarify about the role of the environment. All right. Main thing is, again, realize there can be lots of cues. If someone's like, scientist, I'm going to go to a different environment every time. Cool. What are you going to drink in that different environment? Beer? All right, well, then beer's your cue. Oh, well, I'm going to drink something different every time, too. Cool. When are you going out? 11? Well, then 11's your cue. Right? So realize there can be so many different cues at play here. So to get off of alcohol, the main thing is, if someone says, I only drink at night, realize the impact this can have on sleep is pretty extraordinary. Why do we sleep as people? What does sleep do for us? What would you guys say?
Rejuvenate.
Good, rejuvenate. Anything that starts with the letters RE is probably the right answer. Recharge, rejuvenate, re-energize, restore, rest. What makes sleep what it is has very little to do with how long we lie there with our eyes closed. Everything to do with the brain's ability to go through different stages of sleep. 5 different stages of sleep, different brain waves present in each. REM, that's where we do our dreaming, rapid eye movement sleep. You got stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4 is called deep sleep. Sleep experts have made clear that REM's overrated. It's not that you're like, come on, REM. But instead, you want a night that as the night progresses, a person spends more and more and more time in REM sleep, less and less and less time in the other stages of sleep. So if you want the perfect night's sleep, it should look something like this. If someone goes to bed after having consumed alcohol, they'll fall asleep pretty well. It's a depressant. But the key is what happens to the quality of sleep. We'll ask people in our research all the time on nights where you've been drinking, what do you notice about your sleep? Tell me about your dreaming. What do people tell us? Don't dream. We hear 2 things. Most common, I don't dream at all. Or people say if I do dream, it's crazy vividly right before I wake up. Here's why. Even though a person is, again, falling asleep, the brain waves needed to kick into REM don't happen. If you're intoxicated the whole night, you go the whole night with no REM sleep. If you succeed in sobering up, the body goes through an acute REM rebound, where you'll go no REM, no REM, no REM, then spend too much time in REM. That will account for the vivid, weird dreams. Who cares? What's the impact of a night of REM-deprived sleep? Next day, daytime sleepiness. If someone's like, I just feel like I'm dragging all the time even though I'm getting sleep, you can absolutely see a causal link between drinking at night and daytime sleepiness during the day. Increase in anxiety, increase in irritability, increase in jumpiness. All packaged nicely with a quality of sleep that wasn't so high. Drink every night, this is cumulative. Take a night off, body plays catch up. The next night, we've all experienced a night's sleep like this. Person spends too much time in REM. Think of the last time you pulled an all-nighter, where you only got like 2 hours of sleep. The next day, if you can pull it off, you sleep for 12 hours. How do you feel when you wake up? Yeah, worse. Tired. It's like, how do you feel tired? You slept for 12 hours. Because quantity, different than quality. You know when you're so tired, you're lying there, and you're like, why can't I sleep? Instead of gradually working your way into REM sleep, you person jumps so quickly into REM that it can lead to difficulty even falling asleep, can lead to early waking. Some people say that as they're drifting off to sleep, they're more tuned into that noise 3 doors down, or the ticking of the clock on the wall, or really, roommate, breathe louder. Some people say that they're more tuned into the running commentary in their head. They're lying there and they're like, oh yeah, I've fallen asleep. Wait, now I'm thinking about it. Damn, now I'm awake, and they wind up waking themselves up. Plus, and again, this is the clear case where alcohol can cause this. I mean, obviously sleep deprivation can cause REM deprivation, but the next day, increase in fatigue. Research with college students across the country shows that the 3 biggest barriers to academic success, stress, sleep problems, and anxiety, all 3 of these can be exacerbated or even caused by nighttime substance use. If you do say, I do want to make the choice to drink, how do I do it in a less dangerous or less risky way? It's all based on research on alcohol's biphasic effect. We ask people in our research, if someone's at a party, gets a buzz, starts to lose that buzz, what do they usually do? And people tell us, drink more. The $1 million question is, do they ever get that same buzz back? And people tell us, no. I've asked that question over 4,000 times in my career. I've never gotten a yes. That's a crazy batting average. What do people feel instead? Kind of the drunk part. Sick, tired, sleepy. Scientifically, we totally know why. No one has to answer out loud. We ask people with tolerances, the buzz you get now is when you first started drinking. No one ever says yes to this. This is why. Even though alcohol is a depressant, it's a funky depressant. Because the initial effects have a buzz. If someone takes a sip of alcohol, the body's experience of alcohol is that there is this buzz, depressant effects kick in, depressant effects get done doing what they're doing, body goes back to baseline. If you tap out after 1 sip and you're like, that's it, I'm calling it a night, that's unavoidable. You will experience that depressive curve. But while our blood alcohol level is going up, the body's experience of alcohol is this constant. Until, once we hit a certain blood alcohol level, the effects of alcohol change irreversibly for the remainder of that drinking occasion, such that positives get less positive, depressant effects get more pronounced. This is why when we drink more, we don't get our buzz back and just feel, in quotes, the drunk part, until all a person feels are the full-fledged depressant effects. There's a very clear point where the positives have been maximized, the depressant effects have been minimized, and a very clear point that when we clear it, positives get less positive, depressant effects get more pronounced. What's the really cool news as a field? We've tracked this shift down to within 1/100th of a decimal. That's pretty awesome. We know that shift occurs at a blood alcohol level between 0.05 and 0.06%. What that means, if someone says, well, I want to avoid all the depressant effects, again, choosing to not drink is the best way to do that. When you get your charts, if you notice you typically get to 0.02, 0.03, stick with that. You're less impaired to 0.02 or 0.03 than you would be if you were higher. But if someone says, when I do drink, I'm getting above this, going up to but not exceeding this point, you can flat out prevent this shift from happening. What's in it for you to avoid that, to prevent that shift? Keep in mind that myopia or judgment goes down at 0.06 and higher. The shift occurs 0.06 and higher. You'll certainly avoid blacking out. You'll certainly avoid throwing up. You likely will avoid hangovers. Why? What does research say a hangover is? This. Why do we know this? Not only because of research done out of San Diego and Maryland, but people that stay on this side don't report hangovers. People who clear this tend to report them. So if you make the choice to drink, how do you set a limit? You would want to set a limit that lets you go up to but not exceeding that point. For people with tolerance, we know that this shift has already occurred. That's why the buzz isn't as good as when they first started drinking. If someone stops for a while, that red line will shift back up and they can go back to feeling the buzz they used to have. If you choose to get one of these charts when we're done, how do you set a limit? You would work backwards from a blood alcohol chart. Just as an example, imagine you've got a 185-pound man, normally has 7 drinks over 3 hours. That puts him at 0.092. All you do is work backwards. If he says, I know I'm going to be out 3 hours, go down until you find a point that doesn't exceed 0.06. In this case, it's artificially color-coded in green. Go to the left and look at what that translates to. If he says 5, I wouldn't even feel that. Probably means he's developed tolerance. And again, calling time out for a while, he could lose that. If he says 5, well, I was only going to have 2 tonight. I'll stick with the 2. But if he says 5, I think I can do that. Once you've actually set that limit, keeping track, not only in terms of standard drinks, but how much you've had, spacing your drinks, alternating alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. If that whole buffer thing is a good theory, if someone mixes it up, they still have that cup in their hand, but it's being mixed up. Drink for quality instead of quantity. If you're going to play drinking games, at least alter your approach to them. Ideally, if someone's really trying to be in control tonight, avoid those. Slow down. Don't leave your drink unattended, and don't accept a drink if you don't know what's in it. Even with no bad intent, the bottom one can be true, right? I have no hard data to back this up, but I'm convinced most people have at least that one friend who's like, dude, try this. You're like, what is it? And they're like, I invented it. And it's some crazy, we all have that friend. It's some crazy mixed drink, lots of shots, forget a little mixer. In 60 seconds or less, the main thing to know about research on marijuana is this. THC is one of the 64 cannabinoids in cannabis. And when a person uses marijuana, it binds all across the brain. So on the one hand, it's a plant, it's an herb. On the other hand, lots of psychoactive components happening here. Most relevant to college students, I'm just going to jump ahead in the interest of time, has to do with the research on attention, concentration, and memory. We know the hippocampus affects those 3 things. We know that after marijuana use, the neurons in the hippocampus get suppressed. What does that mean? They do fire, but they fire at a rate that's lower and slower than they could or should be firing. Research with college students shows that a full day later, we can still see an impact following marijuana use, such that the more heavily someone uses marijuana and more frequently, the more pronounced there are problems with attention, concentration, and memory compared to a lighter user who has more problems compared to someone who doesn't use marijuana at all. If you're saying, I feel like this quarter, memory is a real problem for me, I have problems with attention, there's no drug more associated with causing attention problems than marijuana. If someone uses every day and they're like, I don't know, I think it helps my ADD. I tried taking like a day off and my attention was worse, that's withdrawals at that point. Truly, no drug more associated with causing attention, concentration, and memory problems. What's the good news? Call time out. Within 4 weeks, we actually see that, those deficits go away. The other thing I'll say is that related to sleep, you see, bless you, the same REM deprivation you see with alcohol, but you see stage 4 extension. A person spends more time in deep sleep. Marijuana, as a sedative hypnotic, helps people fall asleep, but the quality of sleep similarly is impacted. We've covered a lot. I will definitely loiter if there are specific questions afterward. Before we officially break, can I just check and see what questions as a group or what comments as a group people have? Go right ahead.
I understand that gender and physiology are factors, but what about ethnicity?
For alcohol? Main thing for alcohol is that for the most part, people tend to break down alcohol, like the ability to burn off alcohol is constant across race and ethnicity. Where you see that not true is one of the byproducts of alcohol. Alcohol is broken down in the liver by something called alcohol dehydrogenase. The byproduct of that, acetaldehyde, very toxic to the human body. There's an enzyme that breaks that down called aldehyde dehydrogenase where we see significant differences in ethnicity. For example, research shows that up to 50% of people of Asian descent, that enzyme is rendered darn near ineffective. So even after a drink or two, person gets really red, hot, uncomfortable, sick feeling. They're actually burning off the alcohol just fine. It's the acetaldehyde they're not burning off as well. So blood alcohol charts should be completely applicable across race, across ethnicity. Good question. Go right ahead.
I want to remind the students who are going to look at and the agenda, we're meeting in 103 right immediately after this.
Great, thank you. Completely appreciate the chance to have talked to you guys all today and completely happy you get to travel abroad. I will be up here with charts since we didn't have a ton to hand out to everybody. These are charts for women, these are charts for men. If people would like those charts, please see me afterwards. Safe and uneventful travels. You're in have an incredible opportunity. I hope you make the most of it. So thank you for the chance to meet with you guys today.